السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة على رسول الله وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Dear brothers and sisters, let's begin our not begin the program. We began the program with the recitation of Quran, but before we continue to our study of the 44th dua of Sahifa Sajjadiya, let us recite a Fatiha for the following marhumin: Rahmatullah Karam Ali, Maryam Bai Karam Ali, Maqsood Ali, Kul Jihan Maqsood Ali, Shabir Ali Merchant, Mazhar Ali, Mahmoud Hassan, Salima Mahmoud, Fatima Ismail, marhums of Sheikh and Hamadani family, Jafari and Naqvi family, and Sayyid Muhammad Tahir Jafari. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'een. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجهم. So, inshallah, let us continue our study of Dua 44 of Sahifa Sajjadiya, where Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wasalam is reciting this supplication in welcoming the month of Ramadan. We said, inshallah, we hope to spend maybe 5 days in reviewing this dua, reading this dua, contemplating on this dua. And last night we mentioned a few introductory points. Number one, we said dua is essentially a calling out to someone else or something else. And when we call to someone, of course, we are first and foremost trying to attract their attention. So in gaining someone's attention, we have generally either a request that we're making or we want to express ourselves to that individual. So in the dua that we're reading, we're reciting the supplication that we're making, we want to remember this basic principle. But beyond that, we wanted to say that in the dua that we are reading, as we are taught by the Imam, we want to have two basic ideas in our minds. Number one, what is it that we are asking of Allah? So if the dua is a call to God, we're calling on God. What are we asking of Him? And the second thing we said is that in our callings on Allah, what is it that we're asking of ourselves? In every request that is made, in every expression that we have, there's something inside of us, there's something about who we are and what we're feeling that is coming out as a part of that communication. At least effective communication is that way. So du'as being forms of instruction for us from Ahlul Bayt are teaching us first what to request, second, how to request it, and third, what it says about ourselves when we're making these requests these ways. All right, so we move on to the first few lines of the dua that we began last night. The dua reads, Alhamdulillah alladhi hadana lihamdihi wa ja'alana min ahlihi. All praise belongs to Allah that has guided us to His praise. And all praise is due to Allah for making us amongst His people, His group, His nation, His family, if you want to call. For what purposes? لِنَكُونَ لِإِحْسَانِهِ مِنَ الشَّاكِرِينَ. So that we may be, through His beneficence, from amongst the thankful. وَلِيَجْزِيَنَا عَلَى ذَلِكَ جَزَاءَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And that we may, as a result of belonging to this family, this nation, and giving thanks, we may be recompensed, we may be rewarded, the reward of those who are the good doers. All right, so we ended last night with this point of reflection. What are we saying to God in this statement of thanking Allah, praising Him for making us amongst the thankful? And what are we saying about ourselves? So what does it mean for us to be thankful to God? And when we are in the station of the thankful, why is it that we are deserving of the reward of the good doers. Right? So there's a connection that's made here already in the dua. That if you can find yourselves in this station of the thankful, then you will be rewarded the reward of the good doers. All right, so thankfulness and gratitude is an important concept, and there may be small differences between the two. But again, let's take one step back before focusing on the Islamic tradition. If we look to research on positive psychology, it's a whole field that is budding in trying to understand what it means to capture the ideal state of human living. And positive psychology is one of them. In positive psychology, gratitude or thankfulness is strongly associated and consistently associated with increased happiness. Now, all of these are, of course, terms that require some definition. There may be some subjectivity, but we just take for granted a basic understanding of what happiness is. Gratitude, the research shows us, helps people feel more positive emotions. It relishes good experiences. It improves their physical well-being, and it helps them deal with adversity, and finally helps them build strong relationships as a result of all of these things. So though these research, and they're still in their early stages, they're not developing causal relationships. They're not saying because someone is thankful, then they are happy, and the gratitude is the cause for their happiness. But there's strong enough research, even in the early stages, that makes these correlations. All right, so let me give you a few examples. And they're simple examples, but they serve an important point. There's research that was done by a couple of psychologists at one of them from University of California, Davis, and one of them from the University of Miami, Robert Emmons and Michael McCullough. And I mention them in case you're interested to go and find the study and read it and maybe see if I'm misrepresenting it and bring some counter arguments to present. But in any event, they ran a study and they asked participants to keep a kind of a journal or write a few sentences every week. And from the larger pool of participants that they had in the study, they broke them up into 3 groups. The first group, they were instructed to write on things that they were grateful for that had occurred throughout that week. So every week they were tasked with writing something that had happened to them that they were grateful for. The second group was instructed to write about their daily irritations, about the things that had occurred throughout the week that was displeasing to them. And the third group, of course, was a control group. They asked them to just write about things that had affected them, but not necessarily in a positive or negative way. Today I went outside and it rained. Didn't make me feel any better or worse, but it's something that happened. So the 3 groups that they observed that were doing this exercise in recording the events that had occurred and how it had affected them, after 10 weeks, the first group that was writing on the things that they were grateful for that had occurred, they had measured that they felt more optimistic and they felt better about their lives. And some of the other things that they found was they seemingly also exercised more. There are many studies like this. Another study you'll find by 2 psychologists again at Indiana University, which ran a very similar sort of experiment, where again they broke up students, predominantly undergraduate students, that had sought out counseling and assistance from university-supported mental health groups or counseling groups on campus. And they expressed a concern with mental health. Whether it was school-related or it was beyond school, this was the pool of participants that they had. So when they observed them in the beginning of the study, many of them were, as they describe it, in very low levels of mental health that is at maintenance. That means they were struggling. I'm not a mental health professional, but the way that they characterized it was they were kind of on the lower levels. That means they were struggling, they needed help. Again, they had about a pool of 300, and they broke up their groups into, again, three different groups. The first group, again, was asked to write a letter of gratitude. It was different from that previous study where they just asked them to write about the good things that had happened during the week and they were grateful for. They asked them to write a letter of gratitude to another person, right? So the first one was more focused on maybe the individual. This study is focused on relationships with other people. So you write a letter of gratitude weekly for a number of weeks. The second group, they again were instructed to write about their negative thoughts and their deepest concerns. And the third group was really not asked to write anything at all. Again, in their results, they found that the first group that was writing these letters of gratitude to others displayed and demonstrated significantly improved mental health over the course of this study, which was only a few weeks long after this writing exercise. So again, the basic research that we're finding within psychology, within positive psychology, is drawing these connections between the orientation of gratitude and the action of gratitude having a close connection with a person's sense of well-being. And that well-being may be in the form of how they organize their emotions, which is an important conversation that we need to have as human beings, but also for them to be had within the context of the family and the Muslim community at large, right? We also are not exempt from any of the larger societal challenges that we experience. And one of them, of course, is the regulation of emotions, the understanding of emotions, and the proper channeling of emotions. So this gratitude is helpful in the way of trying to channel positive emotions, to try and control negative emotions. But also it helps to remember that this station of gratitude is not simply by saying something or writing something once in a small controlled environment. Even this research that is presented tells us that the benefits of gratitude will take time if the activity is consistent. All right, so let's go back to the dua. The dua said, "Oh Allah, praise belongs to you that you made us of the praiseful, and also that you made us amongst this group of people that we may become of the thankful. And through that thankful, we may receive some reward from you." So in Islam, what is the utility of thanks? Already the research, psychological research, is telling us it's good for us. So you say if it's good for us, we must do it because Islam endorses all things that are good. We can make a statement like that. So the Quran is very clear. It establishes this. In Surah Luqman, amongst other places, this instruction is given. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةِ. So we gave Luqman a wisdom, or the wisdom. And what was that wisdom? أَنِشْكُرْ لِلَّهِ. The first wisdom that's defined in this ayah is that to be thankful to God. وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ, and this qualification I think is really powerful. وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِ. And he or she who gives thanks, they have given thanks to themselves. They have only given thanks for their own sake. So again, it's not that it's only saying God is not in need of your thanks. We want to be careful of not always presenting it in a theological language like that. You must pray to God, but God is not in need of your prayers. You must thank God, but God is not in need of your thanks. See, when a younger person hears that, they say, well, if God, we should do it and God is not in need, why am I bothering myself to do that, right? You should help another, but the other does not need help. Okay, it seems a little, pointless and redundant. But there isn't a redundancy. The whole point is that the instruction that is given is meant to obligate us for a personal gain. You must do this because it's for your own good. Now, if it's left to our own accord, we say, well, I'm planning things differently. I have a different, strategy. First, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that. And before we know it, because we don't have life experience in that we live multiple times, I messed up, my life has passed me, woe is me, and the regrets that I have at the end of life, right? So the divine mercy is trying to, we can call it an imposition upon us, an obligation to us to do things a certain way because they are for our own good. So this giving of thanks is for our own good. Okay, that's an easy point, I think, to establish. Thank you. But beyond that, the question needs to be asked, how is it that we're supposed to be giving thanks? Again, if we look to popular research and popular psychology, they're telling us things like writing these letters, things like keeping personal journals, things like reaching out to people that we like, vocalizing our gratitude, meditation, all of mindfulness, all of these things are ways that we're supposed to channel this activity of gratitude. And these are good things. But gratitude is not just about these things. And one of the reasons for that that I'm making kind of a statement like this is because I think many of us are doing things to this effect. Now, not as much as we want to, right? And that's why we designate certain times for appreciations of different people. Nurse Appreciation Week. The nurses work so hard, but they're really not so we have to appreciate them more so than before. Teacher Appreciation Day. Our teachers are, they're working hard and they're however you want to call it, underappreciated, undercompensated, whatever. Their humanity is sometimes, robbed of them, but whatever it is, there's a gratitude that is deserving and we should give it, and these days serve as reminders to do that. So we already have some of this in our social practice and in our norms. But the Quran is a little bit more critical to that. And again, it's getting us to think critically about this idea. In Surah As-Saba, verse number 13, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "I'malu ala Dawuda shukra." O people of David, O family of David, O nation of David. "I'malu ala Dawuda shukra." So act this thankfulness. Be thankful in your actions. And then it comments, وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنْ عِبَادِي الشَّكُورِ. But only a small portion, a limited portion of my worshippers are thankful. Okay, so that should be a wake-up call of sorts. Is it that really a majority of people don't understand that thankfulness is important and gratitude is important and they should practice it? I don't think so, right? So what is the Quran getting us to think about, and what is the dua also, where is it taking our mind? So what we need to try and resolve is this definition of gratitude and thankfulness. And within an Islamic understanding, within an Islamic framework, right? What does it mean to be thankful? So you say, okay, saying Alhamdulillah, saying Shukran Lillah. And we have ahadith rawayat to support that. So it's an expression with the tongue. When you find something that is worthy of giving thanks, a blessing that God has given you, you express thanks for that. This is good. And I'm not saying this is like elementary and there's something more advanced. No, this is good. But when Allah says that most people are not giving thanks, we looked at some of the reflections that scholars have made, right? When they speak about giving thanks, there's a underlying concept that's presented. And I want to present this to you all so we all think about this. And maybe we can, this reflection can bear some fruit. There has to be some level of appropriateness, right? The action and the reaction has to be somehow commensurate. If I open the door for you and I hold it, if you turn around and say thank you, that seems to be a commensurate response to the action that I performed, the service that I performed. If I open the door and all of a sudden now you're going to, write me into your will, that seems a little excessive. Maybe there's a moment that you've had right there that no one has respected you, and I, in holding the door, have done that, so now you want to cut me into your will? Fine, I'm not going to talk you out of it, but it doesn't seem to be appropriate. So in the actions that are done, the mercy, the blessing, the beneficence that is extended towards us, what are the appropriate and commensurate thanks and actions that we should do? Scholars will tell us this, that to give thanks is to respond appropriately to the gift that we've been given. So in an Islamic sense, the gifts that God has given us is, we can't count them. The Quran says, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. If you wanted to kind of count all the things that, you're not able to do that. So it's not about trying to account for all of it. But they're at different levels. One is, the very existence that we have, giving a thanks for that. But also the basic faculties that we have, right? The intelligence and the wisdom that we have. The blessing of family and relationship that we have. All of these things are things that are given to us, and we are instructed, rather obliged to give thanks for them because it is for our own good, and the thanks that we give is to be appropriate and commensurate to that thing that God has given, right? So when riwayat say, value your youth before you become old, it's to say that to capitalize on the invaluable nature of youthfulness is to not squander it by doing things that are inconsequential, right? Go ask anyone who's a little older than you or much older than you and say, how valuable is my youth or your youth? And they'll say, I trade it with everything that I have right now. Just to go back and to do, and sometimes they'll just mention a few things. If I could just go back and sit in this home that I was living, or take this trip again, or spend time with this individual. Ask people about their health. Anyone who's struggling with their health, ask them, what's the value you can put on your health? Oh, it's invaluable. So these things that you have, like health and youthfulness and opportunity and intelligence and family and brotherhood and sisterhood and masjid and all of these are gifts that are given. There's supposed to be a thankfulness that is appropriate and commensurate to that. So this is the question that I pose to you and I pose to myself. What are the gifts that God has given us? And what is the appropriate and commensurate thanks that is supposed to be given? If we start thinking in these terms, then we'll begin, hopefully, to better understand why, when Allah says, قَلِيلٌ مِّنْ عِبَادِيَ الشَّكُورِ, maybe, just maybe, the ways that we are utilizing these gifts, there's much more left to be desired. In this month of Ramadan, and through the reading of a dua like this, that's the whole point. What are we asking of God? What are we asking of ourselves? If I'm young, how am I using my youth? If I'm healthy, how am I using my health? If I'm intelligent, how am I using my intelligence? If I'm wealthy, how am I using my wealth? If I have free time, how am I using my free time? All of these are supposed to have an application of thankfulness that is appropriate. One last point before we end, because I know it's time for Maghrib. Sometimes in trying to give thanks, we put certain conditions for God. God, I'll be thankful, but if you give me certain things. So yes, I have health, and yes, I have youthfulness, but all of my peers have that too, right? Especially when you're younger and you're surrounded by people like you, say, well, that's not really something that sets me apart. Allah, if you give me wealth too, I'll show you a thanks that no one ever has shown you before, right? We say things like that. We think things like this, right? Man, if I was just wealthy, I'd fix all the world's problems. Okay. Allah, if I'm really looking for a spouse, if you find me the appropriate spouse, I'll create the best family, the best children you've ever seen, I will produce them. Okay. Or whatever it is, that those desires that we have in life. But the point is not that you shouldn't want those things. It's that from the things that God has given you, is the thanks appropriately being given for then us to make a case in our lowlessness and that God, we can do justice to the next level of thing that you will give me. Right? There's a riwayah that one of the companions of Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam narrates, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Says we were performing the Hajj, we were sitting in Mina. An individual came asking for help. And the Imam, they were eating grapes, and remember, like, these basic things that we have, those were like, big deals, those were commodities. Like to eat a cucumber was a big deal then. To eat grapes was a big deal. So the Imam said, we have grapes now, I can give you some grapes. And the man was like, he said, no, thank you. But if you have any money, I'd appreciate it. Any dirham, whatever. And the Imam said, go ask Allah for help, Allah will help you. So the man kind of leaves little whatever, and he comes back to the Imam and he says, can I have some of the grapes at least? And the Imam refused him. He said, pray to Allah, Allah will help you. The man left empty-handed. Another individual came later, and again he asked the Imam for help. He said, can you help me? The Imam said, I have grapes, I can give you some grapes. The man took a few grapes and he thanked Allah, and he left. As he was leaving, the Imam called him back, and he said, come back. The few grapes that he had given, he gave him now two handfuls of grapes. The man was surprised, and he thanked Allah again, and he left. The Imam called him back a second time, and he said, you thank God? Okay, here. You didn't want money, but how much money do you have in your possession? I'll match that. So the Imam gave him money. The man thanked God, and he left. And the last time, the Imam called him back again. He said, here's my shirt. And again, a shirt was like a valuable thing, right? It's like, here, take my watch or take my phone, something to that effect. Because you thanked God. He gave it to the man thanked God and thanked the Imam. And the Imam said, go on your way. So there's a lot of stories there's a lot of morals to be drawn from the story, but one of the basic ones is this. Sometimes in life, we ask God for something and God responds with grapes. If we receive the grape and use the grape correctly, then God may return to us, a handful of grapes, a bushel full of grapes. And if we do justice to that, then God will give us the money that we first desired. Right? So it's not always that we call on something, we ask of something to God, and God responds appropriately. Some of that is a trial for us, sure. But another layer is that we have to present the responsibility and the maturity that we're going to use the thing that God gives us the correct way. Talk is cheap. We can say a lot of things. We do say a lot of things. But even in the small grapes that we've been given in our lives, if we show that we have done justice to them and we've appreciated them, then all the other things that we want will follow and more, because we've established ourselves as people who are worthy of that. Let's inshallah end there, because I know it's time for adhan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the right of this night and the right of this dua, to make us of those people who may inshallah be of the shakirin, the thankful. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi tayyibin tahirin.